Why do we root for Darth Maul?
Every choice you have made has led you to this moment.
Is it because of his tragic upbringing?
Take it, me.
His unreal potential? Or the fact that he clawed his way back from nothing?
I claim this sword and my rightful place as leader of Death Watch.
So why do we root for Darth Maul? It's a weird question when you think about it, because on paper, Maul's not supposed to be the character we connect with. He's a Sith, he's brutal, and he's violent. He spends most of his life chasing revenge and leaving destruction behind him, and yet somehow, he became one of the most fascinating, tragic, and strangely sympathetic characters in all of Star Wars. And I think the reason is simple. Maul isn't just a villain, he's a victim. Not in a self-pitying way, and not in a way that excuses what he's done, but in the sense that his entire life was shaped by someone else. He was trained, used, and discarded. This left him broken, and he was forced to crawl his way back from nothing. Somewhere along the way, that turned him into one of the most unforgettable characters in the franchise. What makes Maul so interesting is that his story doesn't end with the Phantom Menace. That's where it truly begins. When he came back in the Clone Wars, a lot of people were confused, and honestly, that makes sense. He had been cut in half. Most characters don't exactly come back from something like that. So at first, the reaction was basically, wait, how is this even happening? But the show didn't just bring Maul back for shock value. It gave him an in-depth story, and that's why it worked. His return didn't cheapen his death. It deepened everything around it. Maul wasn't just the cool double red saber-wielding Sith who showed up, fought Obi-Wan, and vanished. He became this broken survivor who refused to disappear. A character who had been thrown away and came back anyway. And that's really the key to Maul. Because if you want to understand why fans root for him, you have to understand what kind of life he had. Maul wasn't raised. He was forged, taken away from Mother Talzin, and brought up by the most powerful Sith Lord at the time, Darth Sidious. Sidious didn't take him in like a son. He shaped him like a weapon. Everything about Maul was built around usefulness, strength, and obedience. He wasn't just given a life, he was given a purpose. And the second that purpose stopped serving Sidious, he was tossed aside like garbage. And that's what makes the whole thing hit so hard. Maul wasn't just defeated, he was discarded. That is where the tragedy really starts. Because once Sidious replaced him, Maul wasn't just angry, he was lost. Everything he was had been built around being the apprentice, the blade in the dark, the one who would carry out Sidious's grand plan. Once that was taken away, what was left? Nothing. That is why his survival matters so much. Maul doesn't come back intact mentally. He comes back angry, broken, and barely holding himself together. He's crawling through the wreckage of his own life, surviving off of his hatred of Obi-Wan.
You may have forgotten me, but I will never forget you. You cannot imagine the depths I would go to stay alive, fueled by my singular hatred for you.
Weirdly enough, that makes him feel more human than a lot of other villains. Darth Vader is tragic, sure. Count Dooku is elegant and cold, but Maul feels different. He feels desperate, like somebody who was never really given a chance to become anything else. That is part of why people respond to him so strongly. His coolness isn't just that he has a double-bladed lightsaber, or that he looks incredible on the big screen. It's that he refuses to stay dead. He claws his way back from the edge of total destruction, and keeps on going, even when there's nothing left to fight for, except the pain itself. This would lead to him rebuilding himself into a galactic power broker. He would go on to form the Shadow Collective, a criminal enterprise that was made up of some of the most powerful crime syndicates ever seen, along with Death Watch. From there, he started building something much bigger than revenge. This wasn't just about getting back at Obi-Wan, or even getting back at Sidious. Maul was creating his comeback to be something that Sidious, nor the Republic, could ignore. This is one of the reasons why his story is so fascinating, because for the first time, he wasn't just a weapon being pointed at someone else's enemies. He was the one pulling the strings. He used the Shadow Collective to help take Mandalore, defeat Pre Vizsla, and install himself at the center of it all. Suddenly, the discarded apprentice was the one ruling from the shadows. He had gone from being thrown away to being powerful enough to rule on his own accord. But even that couldn't last forever. By the time the Siege of Mandalore began, Maul's rule was already collapsing around him. He tried to get Ahsoka to join him against Sidious, not because he suddenly became good, but because he understood Sidious was the real threat behind everything. And when she refused, it was another reminder for Maul. A reminder that he was trapped inside the same cycle of violence and control that had defined his entire life. That's what makes this part of his story hit so hard, because even at the height of his power, he still couldn't escape the shadow of Sidious. He had built something for himself, but he still couldn't build peace. Jumping ahead, we are brought to the most important part of his story, his final meeting with Obi-Wan. By the time we get to their final duel in Rebels, Maul is no longer the same person that he was from the Phantom Menace. He's older, worn down, sharper in some ways, but emptier in others. And when he faces Obi-Wan again, it doesn't feel like a big flashy rematch for the sake of fan service. It feels like an ending. That is what makes their final encounter so good. Because Maul's final moments aren't about winning, they're about closure. He doesn't come in trying to prove how powerful he is. He's not there to keep the cycle going forever. For the first time, there's something quieter underneath him, understanding. After he is cut down, he asks about Luke being the chosen one.
Tell me, is it the chosen one?
He is.
And that moment matters, because it shows he is finally looking beyond his own revenge. He's trying to make sense of the life he lived, of the pain he has been carrying for so long, and of whether any of it meant something. That's why the ending works so well. Because Maul dies not as some grand Sith overlord, but as a man who finally sees the emptiness of what he spent his whole life chasing. That's what makes him tragic. Not that he was evil, not that he was powerful, but he was shaped by darkness from the very beginning, and still somehow managed to become more than a one-note villain. So when people root for Darth Maul, I don't think they're rooting for the Sith. I think they're rooting for the one who went through so much in life, for the kid who was taken, for the weapon that was discarded, for the survivor who refused to disappear, and for the man who spent his whole life searching for meaning in all of the wrong places. If Vader is the tragic hero who falls, then Maul might just be the tragic villain who was never allowed to rise. And that is why we root for Darth Maul.